Welcome to Storyflix Film, where movies are not just watched in a broken bar, they are experienced. Here, we bring you fast, powerful, and engaging movie recaps, turning full films into short, exciting stories without missing the thrill. From action-packed blockbusters to emotional dramas and mind-blowing sci-fi, we break it all down in a way that keeps you hooked till the end. So sit back, relax, and get ready, because every story here is a cinematic journey in minutes. Hard Target is a 1993 Americana action film directed by Hong Kong film director John Woo. The film stars Jean-Claude Van Damme as Chance Boudreaux, an out-of-work homeless Acadian merchant seaman and former United States Force Recon marine who saves a young woman named Natasha Binder, Yancy Butler, from a gang of thugs seen in New Orleans. Chance learns that Binder is searching for her missing father, Chuck Farrer, and agrees to aid Binder in her search. They soon learn that Binder's father has died at the hands of hunt organizers Emil Fauchon, Lance Henriksen, and Pick Van Cleef. Arnold Vosloo, a ruthless businessman and his right-hand mercenary, who arranged the hunting of homeless men as a form of recreational sport. The screenplay was written by Farrer and is based on the 1932 film adaptation of Richard Connell's 1924 short story The Most Dangerous Game. It is the first installment in the Hard Target film series. Hard Target was Woo's first American and English language film, and is widely regarded as the first major Hollywood studio production directed by a Chinese and more broadly, Asian filmmaker. A Universal Pictures was nervous about having Woo direct a feature and sent in director Sam Raimi to look over the film's production and to take Woo's place as director if he were to fail. Woo went through several scripts, finding mostly a martial arts film with which he was not interested. After deciding on Farrer's script for Hard Target, Woo wanted to have actor Kurt Russell in the lead role, but found Russell too busy with other projects. Woo then went with Universal's initial choice of having Van Damme star. Woo got along with Van Damme during filming and raised the amount of action in the film as he knew that the actor was up for it. After 65 days of filming in New Orleans, Woo had trouble with the Motion Picture Association of America to secure the R rating that the Universal wanted. Woo made dozens of cuts to the film until the MPA allowed it an R rating. On its initial release, A Hard Target received mixed reviews from film critics but was a financial success as the film has gained a cult following, especially for the action scenes, establishing A Hard Target as a cult classic. Some critics regard it as one of Woo's best American films. Plot: in New Orleans, a homeless United States Force Recon marine and a Vietnam War veteran named Douglas Binder is the target of a hunt. He is given a belt containing $10,000 and told that he must reach the other side of the city to win the money and his life. Pursuing him is the hunt organizer and wealthy sportsman, Emil Fauchon, his lead right-hand mercenary Pick Van Cleef, a businessman named Mr. Lopakie Fauchon's client who has paid $500,000 for the opportunity to hunt a human, and assassins including Stefan and Peterson. Binder fails to reach his destination and is killed by 3 crossbow bolts. Van Cleef retrieves the money belt. While searching for her father, Binder's estranged daughter Natasha is attacked by a group of muggers. Punks who saw that she had a lot of cash earlier and attempt to rape her. She is saved by a homeless man with exceptional martial arts skills named Chance Boudreaux, a former Force Recon Marine and a sailor, now currently out of work. Boudreaux was initially hesitant to involve himself in her mission, but as his merchant seaman union dues are in arrears, he reluctantly allows Natasha to hire him as her guide and bodyguard during her search. Unfortunately, the search goes slowly as the city's police force is on strike, making the hunter's livelihood easier to conduct. Natasha discovers that her father distributed flyers for a city recruiter named Rental Poe who has been secretly supplying Fauchon with homeless men with war experience and no family ties. Natasha questions Rental about her father's death, but they are discovered by an eavesdropping Van Cleef. Falchon and Van Cleef beat Poe and cut his ear as a punishment for sending them a man with a daughter. New Orleans Police Detective Marie Mae Mitchell is reluctant to investigate Binder's disappearance until his charred body is discovered in the ashes of a derelict building. The death is deemed an accident, but Boudreaux searches the ruins and finds Binder's other matching dog tag, as they always are given in pairs, which was pierced by one of the crossbow bolts. Van Cleef's henchmen suddenly ambush Boudreaux and beat him unconscious to scare him and Natasha out of town. When he recovers, he offers Mitchell the dog tag as evidence that Binder was murdered. With the investigation getting closer, Van Cleef and Falchon decide to relocate their hunting business and begin eliminating loose ends. The medical examiner who had been hiding the evidence of the hunt is killed along with Poe. Meanwhile, Boudreaux's friend, Elijah Roper, who is also homeless and former United States Army Special Force SS, is the next to participate in Falchon's hunt and also ends up dead. Mitchell, Natasha and Boudreaux arrive moments later at Randall's car and are ambushed by Van Cleef and several of his men. During the shootout, Mitchell is shot in the chest and dies. Boudreaux kills a handful of the mercenaries and escapes with Natasha. Falchon and Van Cleef assemble their mercenary team and 5 hired hunters to continue the chase. Boudreaux leads Natasha to his uncle Clarence Duvet's house deep in the bayou and enlists his help to defeat the men. Boudreaux, Natasha, and Duvet lead the hunting party to the Mardi Gras graveyard, a warehouse of old damaged Mardi Gras floats and statues, and kill off Falchon's men one by one. Van Cleef is finally gunned down by Boudreaux in a shootout. In the end, only Falchon is left, but he holds Boudreaux at bay by taking Natasha hostage and stabbing Duvet in the chest with his arrow. Boudreaux charges him, attacking with a flurry of blows, and then drops a grenade in his pants. Falchon attempts in vain to dismantle the grenade but gets incinerated in the explosion. It turns out that Duvet is still alive as the arrow Falchon used only hit Duvet's whiskey flask. Boudreaux, Natasha, and Duvet make their way out of the warehouse. Cast Jean-Claude Van Damme as Chance Boudreaux, an out-of-work cadge in the United States Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance veteran, a merchant seaman, a homeless sailor, and a talented martial artist. After Boudreaux saves Natasha Binder, he is hired by her to help search for her missing father. I sense Lance Henriksen as Emile Falchon, a wealthy sportsman who hunts homeless former soldiers for sport. After finding that he is being investigated by Chance and Natasha, Falchon sends out his gang led by Pick Van Cleef to ambush them. A sense Arnold Vosloo as Pick Van Cleef, a collaborator and the lead right-hand mercenary of Falchon who takes part in his sport of hunting men. He leads the crew of men who are sent out to murder Chance and Natasha. Van Cleef's surname is a reference to actor Earl Van Cleef. 9. A sense Yancey Butler as Natasha Binder, a young woman who comes to New Orleans to search for her estranged father, Douglas, whom she has not seen since she was 7 years old. When Natasha is attacked by thugs, she is saved by Chance Boudreaux who agrees to help her find her father. A sense Cuzzy Lemonsa as Detective Maria Mae Mitchell, a New Orleans police detective who works in the office while the police are on strike. Mitchell helps Natasha by ordering an autopsy when they show her the pierced dog tags that her father had. A sense Willie C. Carpenter as Elijah Roper, Chance Boudreaux's friend who is also homeless and former United States Army Special Forces. A sense Wilfred Brimley as Uncle Clarence Duvet, Chance Boudreaux's uncle who lives deep in the bayou. Chance and Natasha take shelter at his home as well as have him help during the film's final shootout. Other actors in the film include Chuck Farah, the film's screenwriter, as Natasha's father Douglas Binder, Elliot Keener as Randall Poe, A. Marco Street, Jana as Dr. Morton, Joe Warfield as Ismail Zenon, I. Svinole Thorsina as Stefan, A. Jules Sylvestre as Peterson, David Efron as Billy Bob, and Ababe Paisa as Lopaki. A. Z. Raimi, brother of producer Sam Raimi. makes a cameo appearance as a man on the street. Production development. After making a hard-boiled in Hong Kong, director John Woo decided to take an offer to work in the United States, where he would find himself happier as a filmmaker with a preferable work pace and more reasonable hours. Woo was first offered this job in the United States by Universal Pictures chairman Tom Pollock. After he had seen Woo's film The Killer, Universal was not eager to have Woo direct an entire feature and only agreed after what producer James Jackson called a difficult period of convincing. Universal was worried about having an Asian director on set who had limited command of English on a large-scale project. They hired American director Sam Raimi to oversee the film's production and to have him on standby if Woo was not able to fulfill his role as a director. Raimi was very excited to work with Woo as he was a fan of his Hong Kong films. Raimi was also confident in Woo's directorial skills, stating that Woo at 70% is still going to blow away most American action directors working at 100%. On his arrival in the United States, Woo went through several scripts before deciding on a hard target. Describing the scripts he received, Woo stated that some of them were good, some of them were very good, but the rest were simply martial arts movies, and I told producers that I had no interest in doing those kinds of films anymore. I'd done a lot of them already. One of the scripts offered to Woo at this period was for a face-off, which he turned down at the time, turned off by the science fiction aspect of the story. The script for Hard Target was written by Chuck Farrer. Director Andrew Davies was interested in the script, but ultimately turned it down. Woo read Farrer's script for Hard Target, appreciating that it was a simple but powerful story, with a lot of feeling underneath. For a good action film you need a solid structure. Chuck gave me that. Woo also stated that the story is less John Woo but the visual aspect would be very John Woo. Farrer wrote the script originally basing it on the film The Naked Prey. After the script did not turn out, Farrer worked on a script influenced by the film Aliens that became the basis for his comic Virus. The final attempt was a script based on the 1932 film The Most Dangerous Game. Farrer had the story take place in New Orleans to give an explanation of Jean-Claude Van Damme's accent. Pre-production. Before any director was attached to a Hard Target, Universal Pictures saw the film as a potential vehicle for actor Jean-Claude Van Damme. 12/17. Van Damme had already been a huge fan of Woo's films and arranged to meet with him in Hong Kong, where the two got along despite both Woo and Van Damme's difficulty with their English. Woo originally wanted actor Kurt Russell for the lead role, but found Russell to be booked for 2 years with other film projects. On working with Van Damme, Woo stated that he was sure of my own abilities and I know how to make an actor look good on screen, make him look like a hero. I thought I could do the same for Van Damme. Despite early misgivings of working with Van Damme, Woo changed many action scenes in the film to make them more spectacular. On finding that Van Damme was up for it while working with Van Damme, Woo stated that Van Damme had a pretty big ego, but he's still professional and always tries to do a good job. Woo had some control over the film's casting, including casting minor characters and finding a cinematographer. Actress Yancy Butler was cast as Natasha Binder in her feature film debut. At the role led Butler to other starring roles in action films such as Drop Zonia and The Fast Money. Actor Lance Henriksen accepted the role of Emil Fauchon, stating he was a great fan of Woo, noting that his earlier films were so creative, so balletic, and had this incredible philosophy in them. The violence was only a container for the philosophy. Filming began on October 1, 1992. A Hard Target had 74 days of production time and was shot on location in New Orleans, including sequences shot in the French Quarter. Hard Target was put on a tight schedule by Universal that allowed only 65 days of shooting time. This put a lot of pressure on Woo. Woo was also pressured by Universal to tone down the violence and body count that they had seen in his Hong Kong films, as Woo had not mastered the English language yet. It took time for the cast and crew to get used to working with him. When Wu could not explain what he wanted with a shot to cinematographer Russell Carpenter, he would resort to simple statements such as "this will be the Baha shot" to get his message across to Carpenter. Actor Lance Henriksen recalled that it was a gradual process that led everyone involved to start seeing the film as a John Woo film rather than a Jean-Claude Van Damme film. Producer James Jacks recalled that Woo was not the most powerful person on the set, but as far as I was concerned, he was certainly the most respected. The weapon fire on the set was considered dangerous, which led the crew to build a new bulletproof plexiglass shield that could be bolted to the camera. This shield was useful particularly for one sequence in a hard target where Van Damme empties a magazine of ammo into the camera. Desi camera dollies were nicknamed by the crew as the Woo Woo Choo Choo. Russell Carpenter found difficulty in filming the huge gunfight scenes. Carpenter specifically noted the Mardi Gras parade warehouse by recollecting that just the lighting for a space like that, with all those strange shapes and shadows, was difficult enough. But John then added the further complication of wanting the scene shot from several angles at once, often with more than one of the cameras moving. Producer James Jacks supported this style of filming, finding it the most economical way to shoot these types of action scenes. Post-production, the film was edited by Bob Murawski on the set using a then state-of-the-art computerized editing unit that allows the user to edit the film as the movie was being shot. The film was then scored by Graham Revla, who employed Dakota drummer from Japan. Woo was contractually obligated to release a raw rating by Universal Pictures. When submitting the film to the Motion Picture Association of America, MPA, it was judged as too violent and intense for an R rating and received an NC-17 rating. Woo re-edited the film 6 times for the MPA as they never indicated what specific scenes they found objectionable. During this editing period, Van Damme commissioned his own edit of the film. Van Damme's version excises whole characters to insert more scenes and close-ups of his character Chance. When asked about this edit, Van Damme replied that people paid their money to see me, not to see Lance Henriksen. The MPA accepted the film after Woo had made 20 cuts to the film. Scenes cut include the opening chase sequence and the Mardi Gras warehouse sequence. A non-action scene cut from the film was a romantic scene between Chance and Natasha. Released theatrical Hard Target was tentatively scheduled to open in July 1993. Hard Target was released August 20, 1993 in the United States, making it the first film by an Asian director to be released by a Hollywood studio. Hard Target was the second highest grossing film release of the week at the American box office on its initial release. Hard Target also became the 49th highest grossing film in the United States in 1993. Hard Target made U.S. ticket sales of $32.6 million. Worldwide sales were $74.2 million. Home media. Hard Target was released on a Laserdisc and offset in 1994. In the United States, the film was the 14th highest selling Laserdisc and the 46th most rented VHS film of 1994. Hard Target was released in Adventfora Region 1A on July 1, 1998. Region 2, a DVD of the film was released on March 20, 2000. The American DVD has also been released with DVD bundle packs that include other films starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. These DVDs include A Hard Target, as well as A Time Cop, A Street Fighter, A Lionheart, I Sudden Death and At the Quest. The European, Japanese and Australian DVD releases restore 3 minutes of the violent footage missing from the Region 1 DVD, that was cut for an R rating, making them the versions closest to Woo's original cut. A longer 116-minute copy of the film has not been released officially, but has been found as a bootleg. This copy is a poor quality videocassette dub and has a burned-in time code in the corner indicating that the film was not meant for public viewing. About the long version, Woo said, "I like the original cut, of course. And I also heard the long version became a cult movie, as some people have seen it and liked it a lot, which is so interesting. And I wish the studio would have interest in releasing the movie again. I think it's worth it to do it. The film was released in 2013 in the UK and 2015 in the US by Universal Studios. A Kino Lorbre released it in the United States in a 4K Ultra and restored Blu-ray in 2021, including the unrated director's cut and US theatrical cut. Extra features is a new interview with director John Woo. Reception box office. The film premiered in cinemas on August 20, 1993, in wide release throughout the US. During its opening weekend, the film opened in second place, grossing $10,106,500 in business, showing at 1,972 locations. The film The Fugitive came in first place during that weekend, grossing $18,148,331. The film earned $4 million during its opening weekend, ranking in third place behind The Fugitive and Undercover Blues. Hard Target's revenue dropped by 50% in its second week of release, earning $5,027,485. For that weekend, the film fell to third place, even with an increased screening count of 1,999 theaters. The Fugitive remained unchallenged in first place, grossing $14,502,865 in box office revenue. During its final week in release, Hard Target opened in a distant 11th place with $1,270,945 in revenue. For that particular weekend, Striking Distance starring Bruce Willis made its debut, opening in first place with $8,705,808 in revenue. The film went on to top out domestically at $32,589,677 in total ticket sales through a 5-week theatrical run. Internationally, the film took in an additional $41,600,000 in box office business for a combined worldwide total of $74,189,677. For 1993 as a whole, the film worldwide would cumulatively rank at a box office performance position of 23. Critical response. Hard Target received mixed reviews on its initial release, praising the film's action scenes but noting the poor story and Jean-Claude Van Damme's acting abilities. On the film review television show Is Calibert, Roger Ebert stated that Hard Target is not very smart and it's not very original, but it is well made on a technical level. The stunts are impressive. As an action picture, it's well made, but it never becomes more than competent action, and I just can't recommend it for that. Gene Siskel also gave the film a thumbs down on the show, stating that John Woo is a good filmmaker. Van Damme is pretty wooden. You notice the style in the film because there is not much substance. Janet Maslin of The New York Times wrote that Van Damme has still not broken the habit of his own blank-faced posturing. Although Mr. Woo films him in the most aggrandizing style imaginable in a variety, Emmanuel Levy wrote that Hard Target was a briskly vigorous, occasionally brilliant actioner starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, however, hampered by a B script with flat, standard characters, and subjected to repeated editing of the violent sequences to win an R rating. Pick doesn't bear the unique vision on display in Woo's recent The Killer and Hard Boiled. Van Damme and the director's reputation should ensure initial commercial kick on the way to solid if not spectacular box office. Decent Thompson of The Washington Post wrote that when Van Damme isn't duking it out with the English language, scriptwriter Chuck Farrer is filling Henriksen's mouth with villainous pseudo-profundities. Even in a second-rate action picture like this, and despite Henriksen's commendable efforts, they're painful to listen to. Woo's creative presence is practically stifled. There are some flashes of his deliriously wild style, a slow-motion moment here, a well-chosen freeze frame there. He also introduces American audiences to his taste for unique motorcycle stunts and very loud car explosions. But these wooisms are disappointingly minimal. Lance Henriksen received a Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of Emil Fauchon in the film. Audiences polled by Asinema gave the film an average grade of B on an A+2F scale. And on Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a rating of 63% from 40 reviews. The consensus summarizes: Hard Targeted gets a boost from John Woo's stylish direction, but at heart, it's still another silly, explosion-dependent action thriller in the Jean-Claude Van Damme oeuvre. A Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 63 out of 100, based on 22 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. In 2013, A Den of Geek included it at 4 in a list of the top 10 Van Damme movies. Several participants later reflected critically on the making of Hard Target. In 1995, Jean-Claude Van Damme described the script as weak, though he praised the film's action sequences and the visual style brought by director John Woo, noting that Woo made him look like a samurai with greasy hair. Woo himself later acknowledged that the production had been challenging. Looking back in 1997, he described the film as quite a troublesome movie to make, but expressed satisfaction with the action scenes. For the film's 25th anniversary, Woo said that he may have been overly ambitious, attempting to combine elements of Hong Kong action cinema, romantic storytelling and the aesthetics of a modern Western within an American studio production. According to him, this stylistic mixture, including stylized violence and extensive use of slow motion, was unfamiliar to many U.S. audiences at the time. Actor Arnold Vosloo, who played one of the villains alongside Lance Henriksen, later expressed pride in their performances and recalled that studio executives were particularly enthusiastic about the antagonists. However, Vosloo also indicated that he did not have a positive working relationship with Van Damme. Sequel main article: A Hard Target 2. A second film called A Hard Target 2A was released on September 6, 2016, in the US via Universal 1440 Entertainment label. 64. The new iteration stars Scott Adkins, A Robert Nepper, A Rona Mitra, Antrong, and A Timra Morrison. It relocates the action to Myanmar, and has alternately been described as a reboot and a sequel. He believes only humans can provide the intelligence, fear, and unpredictability capable of creating true excitement. This operation is coldly organized, treating a human life as entertainment for the rich and powerful. At the same time, the story introduces Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler. Natasha arrives in New Orleans searching for her missing father, a struggling veteran who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Unlike authorities who dismiss the case quickly, Natasha refuses to believe her father simply vanished. Music, without explanation. Her determination drives her deeper into the dangerous parts of the city, where she begins uncovering hints that something far more sinister is happening beneath the surface. During her search, Natasha crosses paths with Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme. Chance is introduced as a tough yet honorably drifter living on the margins of fast society. Formerly connected to military life, he now, music, survives through temporary jobs and street fighting, carrying both physical skill and music emotional scars from his difficult past. Chance immediately stands apart from music, everyone around him. He is calm under pressure, physically fearless, and guided by a strong personal code despite living in harsh conditions. Beneath his rough exterior exists a man who understands danger intimately and refuses to ignore injustice when music confronted by it. As Natasha explains her father's disappearance, Chance becomes reluctantly involved in Thea investigation. What initially seems like a missing person case slowly reveals a disturbing clues pointing toward organized violence hidden beneath Thea City. The deeper they investigate, the clearer it becomes that powerful and dangerous people are involved. Meanwhile, Fushun and his partner Pika Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, continue operating their deadly hunts without remorse. Van Clee is younger, colder, and more physically aggressive yet than Fu, treating the hunts with a brutal enthusiasm rather than calculated philosophy. Together they create an atmosphere of constant danger surrounding anyone who threatens their operation. The atmosphere during Thea's opening chapter feels tense, dark and dangerous. New Orleans itself becomes more than a setting. It feels alive, filled with hidden corruption, mystery, and violence lurking beneath everyday life. And as Chance Boudreaux slowly steps closer toward uncovering the truth, only a reality begins to emerge. Some people survive by avoiding danger, while others are forced to confront it head-on when innocent lives are at stake. As Natasha Binder continues searching for answers about her missing father, the mystery surrounding the streets of New Orleans grows darker and more dangerous. What at first appeared to be a simply disappearance now begins revealing signs of a hidden criminal network operating beyond the reach of ordinary law enforcement. Every clue Natasha uncovers points toward violence, fear, and people who vanished without leaving a trace. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancey Butler, refuses to abandon her search despite warnings and growing danger. Her determination and emotional connection to her father drive her forward, even when the city itself seems designed to hide the truth. She quickly realizes that many homeless people, music, and struggling veterans in the area have disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Yet almost nobody in authority seems interested in investigating deeply. At her side remains Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme. Chance initially appears reluctant to involve himself fully, but his strong sense of justice and instinct for danger make it impossible for him to ignore what Natasha is uncovering. His background, physical skill, and survival instincts allow him to recognize patterns of organized violence long before others do. Chance's personality becomes more defined during this stage of the story. Beneath his calm confidence exists someone shaped by hardship and survival. He understands violence intimately and knows how dangerous powerful people can become when they believe themselves untouchable. Despite his raw lifestyle, Chance follows a clear moral code that pushes him to protect vulnerable people whenever possible. As their investigation deepens, Natasha and Chance begin discovering evidence connected to Emile Faucon, portrayed by Lance Henriksen and his brutally underground hunting operation. Fushun continues organizing deadly human hunts for wealthy clients who seek excitement through killing people considered invisible by society. Homeless men, unemployed veterans, and desperate individuals become prey in a horrifying game driven by money and cruelty. Fushun's partner, Pig Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, continues serving as the operation's most physically aggressive enforcer. Unlike Fushun's calm and calculated personality, Van Clee enjoys violence openly, treating the hunts almost like entertainment. His music presence adds a constant tension and unpredictability to the organization. Meanwhile, Chance slowly realizes that Natasha's father may have become one of the victims hunted by Fushun's group. This discovery transformed the investigation from curiosity into a personal danger. The deeper they move toward the truth, the more attention they attract from the people responsible. The film's atmosphere becomes increasingly tense during this phase. The streets, abandoned buildings, and hidden corners of New Orleans begin feeling like a maze controlled by predators operating in secrecy. Danger exists everywhere, and the line between a hunter and hunted grows thinner with every step Chance and Natasha take forward. At the same time, Chance's survival instincts begin activating more strongly. He senses that they are being watched and understands that powerful individuals do not tolerate interference lightly. Unlike Natasha, who is still uncovering the scale of the conspiracy, Chance already understands the area, entering a world where violence is used to erase problems permanently. The emotional core of the story also grows stronger here. Natasha is motivated by love and determination, while Chance is driven by conscience and personal honor. Together, they form a partnership built not on trust alone, but on shared willingness to confront danger others avoid. And as the truth hidden beneath the New Orleans slowly begins revealing itself, one chilling reality becomes impossible to ignore. In a world where human life is treated like a game, survival belongs only to those willing to fight back against the hunters. Natasha Binder and Chance Boudreaux move deeper into the mystery surrounding her father's disappearance. The hidden darkness beneath New Orleans becomes impossible. Music to ignore. The city's crowded streets, abandoned warehouses, and forgotten neighborhoods. Music, now feel connected by an invisible network of fear and violence. What began as a desperate search for Onia, music, missing man slowly reveals something far more horrifying operating in secrecy. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, remains determined despite growing danger around her. She refuses to accept simple explanations or abandon the search. Even when authorities show a little interest, the deeper she investigates, the more she discovers a disturbing pattern. People living in our society's margins vanish regularly, especially homeless men and struggling veterans with no family powerful enough to demand answers. Beside her stands Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme. Chance's instincts tell him immediately that this situation is larger and more dangerous than Natasha fully realizes. Years of surviving difficult circumstances have sharpened his awareness of violence and corruption. He understands how predators operate and recognizes the signs of organized brutality hidden beneath the surface of the city. Chance is no ordinary drifter. Beneath his calm attitude and rugged appearance exists a highly capable fighter with military experience, survival instincts, and strong personal principles. He avoids trouble when possible, but once innocent people become targets, his sense of justice makes walking away impossible. Meanwhile, Emile Fauchon, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, continues operating his horrifying hunting business with cold sophistication. Wealthy clients arrive seeking the thrill of hunting human beings through abandoned industrial zones and isolated parts of the city. Fauchon views the hunts almost philosophically, believing a fear and survival instinct create the ultimate challenge unavailable through ordinary violence. His partner, Pig Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Boslow, remains far more openly cruel and aggressive. Van Clee enjoys intimidation and brutality without hesitation, treating victims as disposable entertainment rather than human lives. Together, he and Fauchon create a terrifying balance of intelligence and savagery controlling the underground operation. As Chance and Natasha continue investigating, evidence begins linking Natasha's missing father directly to Fauchon's organization. The realization changes everything. This is no longer just a disappearance. It is connected to a deadly system built around turning vulnerable people into a prey for rich thrill seekers. The danger surrounding them increases immediately. Chance realizes they are now being watched by people capable of extreme violence. Unlike Natasha, whose motivation comes from emotional determination, Chance fully understands the rules of the world they are entering. Once powerful criminals believe someone threatens their operation, survival itself becomes uncertain. The atmosphere during this stage grows darker and more suspenseful. The streets of New Orleans begin feeling less like a city and more like hunting a territory where danger hides behind every corner. Abandoned buildings, alleyways, and industrial ruins create a constant sense of isolation and of vulnerability. At the emotional center of the story, Natasha and Chance grow closer through shared danger and trust. Natasha's determination and courage push her forward even when fear becomes overwhelming, while Chance's strength and experience make him the only persona truly capable of protecting her against the deadly forces surrounding them. Music, and as the truth hidden beneath the city slowly rises to the surface, one terrifying reality becomes clear. The people running the hunt believe his certain lives have no value. But they are about to discover that some targets are far more dangerous than they expected. As Chance Boudreaux and Natasha Van Damme move closer to uncovering the truth behind the disappearances in New Orleans, the danger surrounding them becomes impossible to escape. What Ansia felt like hidden suspicion now transforms into open threat, and the people responsible for the underground hunting operation begin realizing that someone is getting dangerously close to exposing them. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, becomes increasingly protective and alert as the investigation deepens. His instincts tell him they are being watched, and every encounter confirms that powerful individuals are willing to use violence to protect their secret operation. Unlike ordinary people, Chance understands how predators think, and he realizes that once music, Samania, enters the hunter's world, survival becomes a constant challenge. Natasha Van Damme, portrayed by Yancy Butler, continues refusing to back away despite fear and uncertainty. The closer she comes to discovering what happened to her father, the more emotionally driven she becomes. She knows that if she stops now, the truth will remain buried forever along with countless forgotten victims. Meanwhile, Emile Fauchon, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, begins viewing Chance as a serious threat. Unlike previous victims or investigators, Chance possesses military skill, intelligence, and fearlessness. Fauchon recognizes immediately that Chance is not someone easily intimidated or eliminated. Fauchon's music partner, Pic Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, reacts more aggressively, violent and impulsive. Van Clee prefers direct confrontation and sees Chance as both a danger and an exciting challenge. This brutality makes every encounter more unpredictable and deadly. As Chance investigates further, he uncovers more horrifying details about the Humana hunting operation. Wealthy clients brought into isolated parts of the city where desperate men are. Music, forced to run for their lives while armed hunters chase them for sport. The victims are selected precisely because society ignores them. People without protection, influence, or visibility. The cruelty of the operation fuels Chance's anger and determination. Though he often hides emotion beneath a calm confidence, the injustice of innocent people being treated like animals awakens something deeply personal inside him. He begins seeing the fight not only as Natasha's battle, but as his own responsibility. Tension escalates rapidly when Chance and Natasha are directly targeted for the first time. What was once an investigation now becomes survival. Chase sequences, violent confrontations, and narrow escapes force Chance to rely on every skill he possesses. His speed, martial arts ability, and tactical instincts begin revealing why he is far more dangerous than Fauchon expected. The atmosphere during this stage becomes intensely suspenseful and action-driven. The streets and abandoned industrial areas of New Orleans feel increasingly hostile, as if the entire city itself is turning into a hunting ground. Every shadow and empty building carries the possibility of violence waiting nearby. At the emotional center, the partnership between Natasha and Chance strengthens through shared danger. Natasha sees that beneath Chance's rough exterior exists loyalty, courage, and genuine compassion. Meanwhile, Chance becomes more personally invested in protecting Natasha as the situation grows deadlier. And as the hunters begin turning their attention toward Chance Boudreaux himself, one truth becomes terrifyingly clear. The people who created the hunt are about to face something they never expected. A target capable of fighting back harder than any prey they have ever chased before. As the investigation into the disappearances inside New Orleans grows more dangerous, Chance Boudreaux and Natasha Binder realize they are no longer searching quietly for answers. They are now directly challenging a violent organization built on fear, secrecy, and death. The deeper they move into the truth, the more aggressively the hunters respond. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, becomes increasingly alert as signs of fast surveillance and intimidation surrounded them. His instincts sharpened, music through years of hardship and combatant experience tell him they have crossed an invisible line. What began as a missing a person's search is now a deadly confrontation with criminals will eliminate anyone threatening their operation. Chance understands something and Natasha is only beginning to realize. Powerful predators do not fear ordinary people, but they become extremely dangerous when challenged. Every clue they uncover places them closer to becoming targets themselves. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, remains emotionally determined despite growing fear around her. The possibility that her father became one of the hunted victims gives her even greater motivation to continue searching for answers. Refusing to walk away, she pushes deeper into the mystery despite understanding that every step forward increases the danger. Meanwhile, Emilia Fushon, portrayed by Lance Hendrickson, begins treating Chance as more than an inconvenience. Calm, intelligent, and deeply manipulative, Fushon recognizes that Chance possesses unusual discipline and survival instincts. Unlike ordinary victims, Chance is physically capable, mentally sharp, and completely fearless under pressure. Pick Van Cleef, portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, reacts with violent enthusiasm. Brutal and impulsive, Van Cleef views Chance as a dangerous obstacle but also as an exciting challenge where Fong calculates carefully. Van Cleef enjoys direct violence and intimidation. Together they become even more threatening as the investigation closes in on them. Also, Chance uncovers more information about the organization. The horrifying reality becomes undeniable. Wealthy clients are paying enormous sums for the opportunity to hunt human beings through abandoned districts and industrial ruins. The victims are chosen because society rarely notices their disappearance. Homeless men, unemployed veterans, and desperate people already struggling to survive. The cruelty of this operation deeply affects Chance. Though he rarely expresses emotion openly, the idea of innocent people being treated like disposable prey awakens intense music, anger within him. He begins viewing the conflict not simply as Natasha's search for truth, but as a personal battle against men who believe power gives them the right to destroy lives for entertainment. Soon, the hunters decide to eliminate the threat directly. Chance and Natasha become targets, forcing them into dangerous escapes and violent confrontations. Chance's compatibilities, speed, and tactical intelligence begin revealing why he is unlike anyone Fushon's organization has faced before. The atmosphere during this stage grows darker and more suspenseful. New Orleans feels less like a city and more like a maze controlled by predators lurking within abandoned streets, warehouses, and forgotten industrial zones. Music, every location feels dangerous, turning a survival itself into a constant test. Also, Sean Doe and Natasha Binder continue exposing the horrifying truth hidden beneath New Orleans. The conflict shifts into open warfare between hunter and prey. What once operated in secrecy now becomes increasingly unstable as Emile Fushon's organization realizes that a Chance is not simply surviving their attacks, he is fighting back with deadly precision. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, now fully understands the scale of the criminal operation surrounding them. The underground hunts are not isolated acts of violence. but a carefully organized system fueled by wealthy clients seeking excitement through human suffering. Innocent people are treated as disposable targets hunted through abandoned industrial areas like animals, music, for sport. This realization transforms Chance's role in the story completely. He is no longer helping Natasha out of sympathy alone. The fight becomes deeply personal as his sense of justice and survival instinct combine into open resistance against Fushun's organization. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yanzi Butler, also changes emotionally during this stage. The truth about her father and the scale of the violence around them hardens her determination. Fear still exists, but it no longer controls her decisions. She understands that escaping danger would mean allowing the hunters to continue destroying live vessel without consequence. Meanwhile, Emil Fushun, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, grows increasingly fascinated by Chance. Music. Unlike previous victims, Chance possesses intelligence, combat skill, and fearlessness that make him exceptionally dangerous. Fushun begins seeing him less as prey and more as a worthy opponent capable of challenging his carefully controlled world. Pig Van Eyck, portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, reacts differently. Violent and impulsive by nature, Van Eyck becomes obsessed with eliminating Chance personally. He views the conflict almost like a competition driven by aggression rather than a strategy. His brutality makes every encounter more unpredictable and deadly. As the hunters intensify their attacks, the film's action becomes more explosive and relentless. Chance uses his martial arts abilities, tactical instincts, and physical endurance to survive impossible situations. Motorcycle chases, close combat fights, ambushes, and escapes through abandoned buildings turn the city into a battlefield where danger waits around every corner. What makes Chance especially dangerous is not just his physical skill, it is his refusal to panic even while being hunted. He remains calm, focused, and constantly adapting. This frustrates Fushun's organization because the system they built depends on fear controlling their victims. Chance refuses to behave like prey. The atmosphere during this stage becomes intense and aggressive. New Orleans now feels completely transformed into hostile territory controlled by predators. Dark alleyways, abandoned factories, docks, and ruined buildings create a gritty environment where violence can erupt at any moment. At the emotional center of the story, Natasha and Chance grow closer through trust and survival. Natasha increasingly sees Chance not only as a protector, but also someone carrying hidden pain and personal honor beneath his hardened exterior. Meanwhile, Chance's determination to protect Natasha becomes stronger as the danger surrounding them escalates, and as the hunters push harder to destroy Chance Boudreaux, one truth becomes impossible for them to ignore: they might have created the perfect hunting game for helpless victims. But this time, they have chosen a target capable of becoming the hunter instead. As the conflict inside New Orleans escalates into full-scale survival, Chance Boudreaux and Natasha Binder find themselves trapped in a deadly war against men who have spent years treating human life like sport. The hidden hunting operation, once protected by secrecy, is now under threat, and Emil Fushun's organization begins responding with increasing violence and desperation. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, realizes that survival alone is no longer enough. The deeper he uncovers the truth about the underground hunts, the more personal the battle becomes. Innocent people have been hunted, terrorized, and murdered simply because powerful men believed nobody would care about them. Chance refuses to accept that kind of cruelty without resistance. His personality becomes even more defined during this phase. Calm under pressure and highly disciplined, Chance relies not only on physical strength but also on intelligence and instinct. Unlike ordinary victims forced into a panic, he studies his enemies carefully and adapts quickly to every dangerous situation. This ability makes him unpredictable and extremely difficult to eliminate. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yanzi Butler, also grows emotionally stronger as the truth becomes undeniable. The discovery that her father likely became one of the hunted victims transforms her grief into a determination. Though fear surrounds her constantly, she refuses to abandon the fight or allow the victims to remain forgotten. Meanwhile, Emil, Fushun, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, A becomes increasingly fascinated by Chance. Fushang views life through the philosophy of predator versus prey, believing fear reveals the true nature of humanity. Yet, Chance disrupts everything about that belief system. Instead of running helplessly, he fights her back with control, precision, and courage. Pick Van Cleave, portrayed by Arnold Boslow, reacts with growing ragia and aggression. Unlike Pashan's cold intelligence, Van Cleave thrives in violence and intimidation. The fact that Chance continues surviving and resisting begins turning the conflict into a personal obsession for him. As attacks intensify, the film's action sequences become faster and, music, more explosive. Chance survives ambushes, violent street confrontations, and deadly pursuits through abandoned industrial zones. Motorcycle chases, hand-to-hand combat, and narrow escape has create constant momentum, making the city itself feel like an enormous hunting arena controlled by danger. What truly unsettles Fushang's organization is that Chance refuses to think like prey. Even when outnumbered and targeted, he remains calm and tactical. Every attempt to corner him only reveals how capable and dangerous he truly is. The hunters slowly begin realizing they may have underestimated the man they are trying to destroy. The atmosphere during this stage grows darker and more intense. New Orleans becomes a world of shadows, abandoned factories, docks, alleyways, and hidden violence where survival depends on speed, awareness, and instinct. Every empty street feels dangerous, and every encounter carries the possibility of sudden death. At the emotional core, Natasha and Chance's connection deepens through shared danger and trust. Natasha sees beyond Chance's hardened exterior and recognizes the humanity, music, and personal code guiding him. Meanwhile, Chance becomes even more determined to protect Natasha as the conflict grows increasingly deadly. And as the hunters continue pushing harder to eliminate Chance Boudreaux, one dangerous truth becomes impossible to avoid. The men who build their power by hunting the weak area finally facing someone who refuses to fear them. As the deadly conflict intensifies across New Orleans, Chance Boudreaux and Natasha Binder move deeper into a war that is no longer about uncovering secrets alone. It is now about survival against an organization willing to destroy anyone standing in its path. The hunters who once operated confidently in the shadows are beginning to lose control as music. Chance continues resisting them at every turn. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, becomes increasingly dangerous to Emile Fushang's operation. His combat skills, military instincts, and refusal to surrender make him unlike any prey the hunters have ever faced before. Chance understands violence intimately, but unlike the men hunting him, he fights to protect innocent lives rather than for pleasure or power. At this stage, Chance begins taking a more active role against the organization instead of merely escaping from it. He studies his enemies carefully, anticipating their movements and learning how their hunting system operates. His intelligence becomes just as important as his physical ability, allowing him to survive situations designed to trap and eliminate him. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancey Butler, remains emotionally committed despite the overwhelming danger surrounding them. The truth about her father's fate and the countless forgotten victims strengthens her resolve. Though fear remains constant, Natasha refuses to allow the hunters to silence the truth through intimidation or violence. Meanwhile, Emile Fushang, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, grows more personally invested in defeating Chance. Calm and calculating, Fushang views the situation almost philosophically. To him, Chance represents a rare challenge. A man capable of disrupting the predator or prey hierarchy Fushang believes defined as the human nature. Pick Van Cleave, portrayed by Arnold Boslow, becomes increasingly aggressive and impatient. Unlike Fushang, who respects strategy and control, Van Cleave is driven by anger and violent instinct. His obsession with killing a Chance personally begins clouding his judgment, making him even more dangerous and unpredictable. The action sequences during this phase become larger and more explosive. Chase scenes through abandoned industrial zones, violent close combat encounters, and brutal ambushes turn New Orleans into an open battlefield. Chance's martial arts skills and physical endurance are pushed to their limits as he fights against a heavily armed hunters determined to eliminate him permanently. What truly shifts the balance of power is the psychological change happening within the hunters themselves. For the first time, fear begins moving in the opposite direction. The men who once hunted helpless victims now realize they are facing someone capable of turning their own tactics against them. Chance's calm, confidence and relentless survival ability create growing tension inside the organization. The atmosphere grows darker and more intense during this chapter. The abandoned factories, docks, empty warehouses, and rain-soaked streets of New Orleans create a harsh environment filled with constant danger. Every location feels isolated, violent, and unpredictable, reinforcing the feeling that nowhere is truly safe anymore. At the emotional center, the connection between Natasha and Chance continues strengthening. Shared danger creates deeper trust between them, and Natasha increasingly understands that beneath Chance's hardened exterior exists loyalty, compassion, and personal honor shaped by years of hardship and survival. And as the hunters continue closing in around Chance Boudreaux, only a truth becomes terrifyingly clear. The moment prey learns how to fight back, the hunters begin discovering what fear truly feels like. As violence spreads across New Orleans, the deadly conflict between Chance Boudreaux and Emile Fauchon's hunting organization reaches a far more dangerous level. What began as a search for truth has now transformed into open survival warfare, with both sides fully aware that only one will ultimately walk away alive. Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, is no longer simply reacting to attacks. He is actively disrupting the hunters' operation. Every encounter proves that he is smarter, stronger, and more resilient than any Fauchon's organization has faced before. His combat experience, tactical instincts, and physical skill allow him to survive situations designed to break out ordinary men. But what truly separates a Chance from the hunters is his mindset. Unlike Fauchon and his music clients who see violence as entertainment and power, Chance fights with purpose. He protects people who cannot defend themselves and refuses to let innocent victims become forgotten targets seen as someone else's cruel game. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, continues standing beside Chance despite the escalating danger. The horrifying truth about her father and the underground hunts has changed her completely. Fear still follows her, but determination now drives her actions more strongly than fear itself. She understands that if they fail, countless future victims will continue disappearing without justice. Meanwhile, Emile Fauchon, portrayed by Lancia Hendrickson, becomes increasingly obsessed with defeating Chance personally. Calm, intelligent, and deeply manipulative, Fauchon views the conflict almost like a test of philosophy. He believes the world belongs to predators strong enough to dominate others, and Chance's resistance threatens that belief system directly. Pig Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, grows even more reckless and violent. His frustration intensifies with every failed attempt to eliminate Chance. Unlike Fauchon's controlled patience, Van Clee responds emotionally, making him more dangerous, but also more unstable. As the conflict escalates, the action during this stage becomes relentless. Explosive chases, brutal hand-to-hand fights, gun battles, and narrow escapes dominate the story's momentum. Chance moves through abandoned warehouses, industrial docks and dark city streets like a survivor, constantly adapting to danger. His martial arts skills and quick thinking repeatedly allow him to overcome enemies who outnumber and outgun him. At the same time, fear begins spreading inside the hunters' organization itself. The men who once enjoyed controlling terrified victims now realize Chance cannot be controlled. Every trap set for him turns into another failure, and every confrontation exposes how dangerous he truly is. The atmosphere becomes increasingly intense and aggressive. The city feels darker than ever, transformed into a violent maze of hidden threats and collapsing safety. Rain-soaked streets, empty industrial zones, and abandoned buildings create a constant feeling of tension where survival depends entirely on instinct and speed. Emotionally, The bond between Natasha and Chance grows as stronger through everything they endure together. Natasha sees the humanity and moral strength hidden beneath Chance's hardened exterior, while Chance becomes even more determined to protect her and to stop the hunters permanently. And as the war between hunter and prey continues spiraling toward chaos, one truth becomes undeniable: the people who built their power through fear never imagined what would happen if someone's Chandra refused to be afraid of them. As the conflict deepens further inside New Orleans, the battle between Chance Boudreaux and Emile Fuchon's organization reaches a point where control begins slipping from the hunters. What was once a carefully managed system of violence, music, ice now turning chaotic as Chance continues surviving every attempt to eliminate him. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, becomes the central disruption to Fuchon's entire operation. Every trap, ambush, and planned hunt fails to stop him. His ability to read a danger, adapt quickly, and fight with precision makes him far more than just another target. He is becoming a direct threat to the hunters themselves. Chance's actions are no longer defensive alone. He begins striking back in meaningful ways, forcing the organization to react instead of control the situation. His calm mindset under pressure allows him to survive via environments designed for death, turning the hunters' own methods against them. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancey Butler, continues standing firm despite the increasing danger. Her emotional drive remains tied to finding the truth about her father and the victims who were erased without justice. The more she learns, the more she understands that walking away is no longer an option. Emile Fuchon, portrayed by Lancia Henriksen, begins showing deeper frustration beneath his calm exterior. He no longer views Chance as just an anomaly. He sees him as a real threat to the philosophy behind his entire operation. Chance represents unpredictability, music, something Fuchon cannot fully control or calculate. Pico Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, becomes increasingly unstable in his approach. His violent nature pushes him toward reckless decisions, making him dangerous in direct confrontation but also less strategic. His obsession with a killing Chance intensifies as personal pride begins overriding logic. The action escalates further, turning the city into a full battlefield. Chases through industrial ruins, close-range gunfights, explosive ambushes, and a brutal hand-to-hand combat define the stage of the story. Chance's martial arts ability and instinct for survival allow him to overcome situations where most people would fail instantly. Every confrontation now carries higher stakes. The hunters are no longer just observing a Chance, they are actively fearing him. Their system, once built on superiority and control, is beginning to fracture under the pressure of one man refusing to submit. The environment becomes even more hostile. Abandoned docks, dark alleyways, collapsing warehouses, and the rain-soaked streets of New Orleans create a sense of constant tension. Nowhere feels safe, and every movement could lead to another deadly encounter. At the emotional core, Natasha and Chance's connection strengthens further. Trust replaces hesitation as the AEO continues surviving together. Natasha sees Chance not as a simple protector, but as someone driven by a strong moral code and deep sense of justice. Chancia in turn becomes more committed to ensuring Natasha survives the nightmare unfolding around them. And as the hunters lose more control over the situation, one reality becomes impossible to deny. The system built to hunt the weak is now facing something I'd never prepared for. A man who refuses to break, refuses to run, and refuses to become prey. As the conflict intensifies, the underground hunting operation inside New Orleans begins collapsing under its own violence. What once operated with precision and control is now becoming unpredictable as Chance Boudreaux continues disrupting every layer of Emile Fuchon's system. The hunters area no longer fully in control of the gamma they created. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, music, has now fully transitioned from survivor to active opponent. His movements are calculated, efficient and increasingly offensive. Instead of only escaping danger, he begins anticipating it, turning ambushes into counterattacks and forcing the hunters into defensive positions they are not used to. His strength in this stage is not just physical. Chance's experience, awareness, and ability to remain calm under extreme pressure allow him to outthink opponents who rely on arrogance and overconfidence. The hunters begin realizing that their prey is no longer behaving like prey at all. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, continues pushing forward despite emotional exhaustion and danger. Her search for her father has now transformed into something larger. Her commitment to exposing the entire system responsible for so many disappearances. Even when fear rises, her determination does not fade. Emilia Fushon, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, becomes more focused and personally invested in eliminating Chance. Calm, strategic, and deeply analytical, Famo begins treating Chance as a rare anomaly that must be removed to restore control. His philosophy of predator versus prey is directly challenged by Chance's refusal to break. Pig Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Waslow, becomes increasingly violent and unpredictable. Unlike Fushon's controlled mindset, Van Clee reacts emotionally, pushing for direct confrontation and escalating brutality. His frustration grows as every attempt to eliminate Chance fails or backfires. The action escalates into more intense sequences, high-speed chases through industrial zones, close combat encounters, gunfights in abandoned buildings, and explosive set pieces dominate the narrative. Chance continues adapting in real time, using his environment, timing, and reflexes to survive via overwhelming odds. What makes this phase particularly dangerous for the hunters is the shift in momentum. Instead of controlling the battlefield, they are now reacting to Chance's movements. Every attempt to trap him exposes weaknesses, in their system, making their organization more vulnerable than ever before. The atmosphere of the city becomes increasingly hostile and chaotic. Rain, darkness, abandoned infrastructure, and narrow industrial corridors create a sense of constant pressure. Every location feels like part of a larger trap where danger can appear at any moment without warning. At the emotional core, Natasha and Chance's trust deepens further. Natasha sees firsthand that a Chance is not driven by revenge or violence for its own sake, but by a strong sense of justice and protection. Meanwhile, Chance becomes more committed than ever to ensuring Natasha survives, and the truth is exposed. And as the hunters begin losing their grip and control completely, one truth becomes undeniable. A system built on fear can only survive as long as its victims remain afraid. But once fear disappears, the hunters become the ones being hunted. As the situation reaches its most unstable point inside New Orleans, Emile Fushon's hunting operation begins to fracture under pressure. The system that once depended on absolute control and secrecy is now struggling to contain a single man who refuses to do according to their rules. Chance Boudreaux has completely changed the balance of the game. Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, is now fully operating on both survival instinct and strategic retaliation. He is no longer just reacting to attacks. He is dismantling the hunter's advantages step by step. Every encounter reveals more of his ability to adapt, anticipate, and turn violence back onto those who initiate it. What makes Chance especially dangerous at this stage is his understanding of patterns. He begins recognizing how the hunters communicate, how they move through territory, and how they rely on intimidation and numbers. Instead of being overwhelmed, he starts isolating their weaknesses and exploiting them in real time. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, remains firmly committed despite exhaustion and fear. Her emotional journey has transformed from personal searching to a moral purpose. She is no longer just trying to find her father. She is now witnessing the scale of a system that destroys lives without accountability, and she refuses to walk away from it. Emile Fushon, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, begins to lose his calm confidence. For the first time, his philosophy, of predator dominance is being challenged in a way he cannot easily control. Chance represents unpredictability, something Fong cannot fully calculate or manipulate, and that makes him dangerous in a way money or power cannot fix. Pika Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Waslow, becomes increasingly aggressive and reckless. His frustration grows as Chance continues surviving every attempt to eliminate him. Unlike Fushon's controlled thinking, Van Clee is driven by emotion, turning each confrontation into a personal obsession rather than a strategic mission. The action intensifies again, moving through high-risk environments, abandoned warehouses, industrial corridors, rooftops, and narrow urban escape routes. Each sequence highlights a Chance's precision fighting style, combining martial arts, awareness, and an instinct to survive against armed and coordinated hunters. At this stage, the hunters begin experiencing something unfamiliar: uncertainty. Their confidence built on years of dominating a weaker target is now being replaced by hesitation. Chance does not behave like anyone they have hunted before. And that unpredictability disrupts their entire system. The city itself continues to feel like a shifting battlefield. Rain, darkness, and abandoned industrial structures create an environment where visibility is limited and danger is constant. Every sound, movement, and shadow carry as a potential threat, increasing the psychological pressure on both sides. At the emotional center, Natasha and Chance continue strengthening their trust. Natasha no longer sees Chance as just a protector, but as someone driven by a strong internal code of justice. Chance, in return, becomes increasingly focused on ensuring Natasha's safety and finishing what they started, exposing the truth behind the hunts. And as Emily Fushion's control over his operation continues slipping further, one reality becomes unavoidable. The hunter's greatest weakness is the belief that their prey will always remain afraid. But when fear disappears, survival belongs to the one who adapts. Music fastest. As Emile Fushion's underground hunting network begins collapsing further inside New Orleans, the tension shifts from controlled violence into a pure instability. The system built in secrecy, fear, and privilege is now being exposed piece by one man who refuses to become a victim. Chance Boudreaux is no longer just surviving. He is actively breaking the structure that once made the hunts possible. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, continues evolving from reactive fighter into calculated disruptor. His strength now lies in anticipation. He reads environments quickly, understands enemy behavior patterns, and uses timing and positioning to turn disadvantageous situations into opportunities. Each confrontation makes him more dangerous because he learns directly from every attack. The hunters begin noticing a critical shift. Chance is no longer behaving like prey at all. He is forcing them to react, disrupting their coordination and creating fear within their own ranks. What was once a system designed for entertainment is now becoming a survival problem for its creators. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, remains emotionally steady despite exhaustion and danger. Her journey has fully transformed from music, personal search into exposure of a hidden system built on human suffering. The truth about the missing victims, including her father, has become a driving force that she can no longer abandon, no matter the risk. Emile Fushion, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, begins losing the psychological control he once held over the situation. Calm and intellectual on the surface, he now faces a reality he did not anticipate. His philosophy of predator dominance is being challenged by someone who refuses to operate within fear-based logic. Chance does not behave like prey, and that breaks Fushion's expectation of control. Pick Van Cleef, portrayed by Arnold Winslow, becomes more volatile and dangerous as frustration increases. Unlike Fushion's structured thinking, Van Cleef responds emotionally, escalating a violence without restraint. His obsession with killing Chance grows music, stronger, making him less predictable but also more reckless in execution. The action sequences escalate further into high-intensity confrontations across industrial zones, rooftops, narrow corridors, and abandoned structures. Each encounter emphasizes Chance's adaptability. He uses environment, movement, and precise timing to survive. Music, against armada groups trained to eliminate targets efficiently. What changes significantly in this stage is the psychological state of the hunters. For the first time, fear begins entering their system. They are no longer fully confident in their dominance. Every failed attempt to eliminate Chance reinforces the realization that their opponent is not reacting like any previous target they have controlled. The environment continues to reinforce tension. Rain, darkness, empty industrial landscapes, And decaying infrastructure create a setting where visibility is limited and the danger is constant. Every movement feels exposed and every decision carries immediate consequences. At the emotional, music, center, Natasha and Chance's bond strengthens through shared endurance. Natasha's determination remains rooted in truth and justice, while Chance's focus sharpens around protection and ending the cycle of violence. Their trust, music, become as essential as the situation becomes increasingly unstable. And as Fon's carefully controlled system continues breaking down, one truth becomes undeniable: a predator is only powerful while its prey remains afraid. But once the prey learns to adapt, the entire balance of power begins to collapse. Also, the underground hunting operation inside New Orleans spirals further out of control. Emile Fauchon's once carefully designed system begins showing clear signs of collapse. The hunters are no longer operating with confidence. They are reacting, improvising, and struggling to contain a target who refuses to behave like prey. Chance Boudreaux has fundamentally changed the rules of the game. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, continues advancing from survival into full counteraction. His movements are now precise and purposeful, not just defensive. He studies how the hunters operate, how they coordinate, and how they rely on intimidation and numbers. Instead of being trapped by their system, he begins dismantling it through timing, awareness, and calculated resistance. Every encounter strengthens his advantage. The more they attack, the more he learns, the more they pursue, the more openings he creates. Chance is no longer simply escaping danger, he is reshaping it around himself. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, remains committed even as exhaustion and fear increase. Her emotional journey has fully, music, transformed into a moral mission. The disappearance of her father and countless unseen victims now represents a larger injustice she can no longer ignore. Walking away is no longer possible for her. Emile Fauchon, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, begins showing cracks in his composed philosophy. His belief in predator dominance depends on control, calculation, and predictably prey behavior. Chance disrupts all of that. For the first time, Fauchon faces uncertainty, a variable he cannot fully predict or manipulate. Vic Wang, portrayed by Arnold, becomes more unstable and aggressive as frustration builds. Unlike Fauchon's strategic thinking, Ben Clear responds with emotion and violence, escalating every confrontation. His growing obsession with killing Chance makes him increasingly reckless and unpredictable. The action intensifies again across abandoned industrial areas, rooftops, warehouses, and narrow city corridors. Each sequence highlights Chance's ability to remain calm under pressure while facing multiple armed attackers. His combat skill, movement, and adaptability allow him to survive his situations designed to overwhelm him completely. What becomes most significant at this stage is the shift in psychological balance. The hunters are no longer confident in their dominance. Their system built on fear and superiority is starting to fail against music, someone who refuses to panic or submit. For the first time, they are forced to confront uncertainty inside their own operation. The environment continues to heighten attention. Rain-soaked streets, empty factories, and decaying industrial zones create a constant sense of exposure. Every shadow feels like a potential threat, and every sound suggests a movement from unseen enemies. Survival depends entirely on awareness and split-second decisions. At the emotional core, Natasha and Chance continue building trust through shared danger. Natasha's determination strengthens as truth and justice become her guiding force, while Chance's focus sharpens around protection and ending the system responsible for so much suffering. Their partnership becomes essential to surviving what comes next. And as Emile Fauchon's control over his operation weakens further, one reality becomes impossible to ignore. A system built on fear cannot survive when fear stops working. And once that, music, happens, even the hunters begin to understand what it feels like to be hunted. As the conflict reaches its most dangerous phase inside New Orleans, Emile Fauchon's underground hunting empire begins to fracture beyond repair. What was once a controlled elite system of violence is now collapsing under pressure from an unstoppable variable, Chance Boudreaux, The hunters are no longer in command of the game, they are struggling to survive it. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, has now fully transitioned into the role of counterforce. He is no longer reacting to threats blindly. He is dismantling the structure that enables them. Every confrontation reveals more weaknesses in the hunter system, and Chance exploits them with a precision, timing, and adaptability. At this stage, Chance operates with the complete awareness of how his enemies think. He understands their reliance and fear, coordination, and overwhelming force. Instead of being intimidated, he uses their aggression against them, forcing them into mistakes that expose their vulnerabilities. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, remains emotionally steady despite exhaustion and danger. Her journey has fully evolved into something larger than a personal loss. The truth about her father and the victims of the hunt has become a moral responsibility she can no longer abandon. She is now committed to seeing the entire system exposed. Emil Fushon, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, begins losing his psychological dominance over the situation. His worldview based on predator superiority and controlled violence is directly challenged by Chance's refusal to submit. For the first time, unpredictability enters Fushon's carefully constructed system, creating cracks in his control. Pika Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Lowe, becomes increasingly reckless and violent. Unlike Fushon's calculated thinking, Van Clee relies on aggression, music, and personal obsession. This desire to eliminate Chance becomes emotional rather, than strategic, pushing him toward dangerous and impulsive decisions. The action escalates into some of the most intense sequences yet chases through industrial ruins, rooftop pursuits, close, quarters combat, and explosive confrontations dominate the cityscape. Chance continues surviving overwhelming odds using martial arts, precision, environmental awareness, and tactical movement that keeps him one step ahead. What defines this stage is the psychological reversal. The hunters, once confident in their dominance, are now forced into uncertainty. Their system depends on predictable behavior. But Chance does not behave predictably. Each failed attempt to eliminate him increases fear within their ranks. The environment reinforces this instability. Rain, darkness, abandoned warehouses, and decaying industrial zones create a constant atmosphere of tension. Every location feels like a trap, and every shadow carries the possibility of sudden violence. At the emotional center, Natasha and Chance's bond, strengthens through shared survival. Natasha's determination grows stronger with every revelation, while Chance's focus sharpens around ending the cycle of violence entirely. Their trust becomes the emotional anchor that allows them to keep moving forward through overwhelming danger. And as Emil Fushon's control over his empire finally begins slipping beyond recovery, only a truth becomes undeniable. A system built on fear can only function as long as it remains unchallenged. But once fear stops working, the hunters become just as vulnerable as the hunted. As the underground hunting system in New Orleans reaches a breaking point, Emil Fushon's carefully controlled world begins collapsing from within. The operation that once depended on secrecy, discipline, and total dominance is now unraveling under pressure from one mana who refuses to be controlled. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, has fully evolved into a force of disruption. He is no longer just surviving encounters. He is actively breaking the structure that allows the hunts to exist. Every movement he makes now has purpose, countering, redirecting, and dismantling of the hunter's advantage step by step. His greatest strength at this stage is adaptation. Chance studies how the hunters coordinate, how they isolate targets, and how they rely on fear to control situations. Instead of reacting blindly, he anticipates their behavior and turns their own tactics against them, forcing confusion and hesitation inside the ranks. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, remains emotionally committed despite exhaustion and escalating danger. Her journey has shifted completely from personal loss to exposing a hidden system of violence. The truth about her father and the countless unnamed victims now fuels her determination to continue forward no matter the cost. Emil Fushon, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, begins experiencing a psychological shift. His belief in a controlled predator dominance depends on unpredictable prey behavior. Chance breaks that assumption entirely. For the first time, Fushan is forced to deal with the uncertainty, and that unpredictability weakens the foundation of his control. Pik Van Clee, portrayed by Mavazloa, becomes increasingly unstable. This aggression intensifies as frustration builds and his obsession with killing a Chance turns personal. Unlike Fushan's strategic mindset, Van Clee operates an emotion, making him more dangerous in a direct confrontation, but far less predictable in execution. Action escalates across industrial wastelands, abandoned buildings, rooftops, and narrow urban corridors. Each sequence highlights Chance's precision under pressure, his ability to fight multiply armed opponents, escape coordinated traps, and maintain control even when outnumbered. His martial arts skill and tactical awareness allow him to survive via increasingly impossible situations. You add the psychological balance shifts further in this stage. The hunters begin losing a confidence in their system. Their methods depend on intimidation and control, but Chance no longer responds to fear. Instead, he disrupts their coordination, forcing them into reactive behavior they are not accustomed to. The environment reinforces the chaos. Rain, darkness, rusted industrial structures, and empty streets create a constant feeling of vulnerability. Every sound, music, feels amplified, every movement potentially lethal. The city itself becomes part of the hunt, offering no true safe ground for either side. At the emotional center, Natasha and Chance continue strengthening their bond. Trust grows through shared danger, and both understand their roles more clearly. Natasha as the one seeking a truth, and Chance, music, as the only ensuring survival long enough to reach it. Their connection becomes a stabilizing force amid escalating violence, and as Emile Fusen's empire continues to collapse under the weight of its own exposure, one truth becomes undeniable. A system built on fear cannot only survive while it remains unchallenged. But once fear breaks, even the hunters must face the possibility that they are no longer in control. Also, the underground hunting operation in City New Orleans reaches its breaking point. Emile Fushan's entire system begins to collapse under the weight of exposure, resistance, and failure. What was once a carefully controlled world of elite violence is now unstable, unpredictable, and rapidly turning against the creators. Chance Boudreaux has completely changed the balance of power. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, now stands as the central force dismantling the hunter's empire. He is no longer simply surviving attacks, he is actively hunting the hunters. Every movement is calculated, every confrontation intentional. Music, and every action pushes the system closer to total breakdown. His fighting style at this stage is fully adaptive. Instead of relying only on reaction, Chance uses timing, environment, and anticipation to control encounters. The hunters who once relied on superiority and organization are now forced into confusion as their prey begins operating like a counterforce designed to dismantle them. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancey Butler, remains determined despite exhaustion and trauma. Her emotional journey has transformed completely. What began as a search for her father is now a mission to expose a hidden system of human exploitation. She refuses to abandon the truth even as the danger becomes overwhelming. Emile Fushan, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, finally begins losing control. His philosophy of predator dominance depends on structure, fear, and predictable prey behavior. Chance breaks all three. For the first time, Fushan is confronted with a situation he cannot fully calculate or manipulate, and that uncertainty stabilizes his authority. Pik Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Waslow, becomes increasingly violent and emotionally driven. His obsession with killing a Chance overrides strategy, pushing him into reckless confrontations. Unlike Fushan's calculated mindset, Van Clee operates on rage and impulse, making him unpredictable, but also vulnerable to mistakes. The action reaches its peak intensity, chases through industrial ruins, rooftop pursuits, brutal close quarters combat, and explosive confrontations define the battlefield. Chance continues surviving against the overwhelming odds using precision, awareness, and controlled aggression to overcome multiple armed attackers. The Hunter's system begins to fully collapse. Fear spreads within Thea ranks as Chance repeatedly survives acid traps designed to kill him. Their confidence fades, replaced by hesitation and confusion. The predator-prey philosophy that once defined them no longer holds meaning in a situation where the prey refuses to behave like a prey. The environment amplifies these chaos. Rain-soaked streets, abandoned warehouses, rusted factories, and dark industrial corridors turn New Orleans into a fractured battlefield. Every location feels unstable, every shadow feels threatening, and survival depends entirely on instinct and precision. At the emotional center, Natasha and Chance move as a unified force. Natasha's resolve strengthens, music, as struggle becomes unavoidable, while Chance's mission becomes focused on ending the cycle of violence permanently. Their trust and coordination become essential to surviving the final escalation, and as Emile Fuchson's control finally disintegrates beyond repair, only reality becomes undeniable. A system built on fear does not fail slowly. It collapses the moment fear no longer works, and once that moment arrives, the Hunters become just another form of prey. As Emile Fuchson's underground empire continues collapsing inside New Orleans, the situation reaches a point where control no longer exists. Only a survival remains. The carefully built system of elite hunting, secrecy, and domination is now breaking apart under the pressure of one unstoppable force. Chance Boudreaux. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, has fully shifted into offensive dominance. He is no longer reacting to the Hunters. He is dismantling their structure piece by piece. Every encounter exposes another weakness. Every confrontation weakens their confidence, and every survival reinforces his control over the battlefield. At this stage, Chance operates with complete clarity. He understands the Hunter's psychology, their reliance on fear, and their dependence on control. Instead of allowing himself to be cornered, he redirects their aggression, using timing, environment, and precision to turn their attacks against them. The Hunters are no longer in control of the hunt. They are reacting to it. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, continues forward despite emotional exhaustion and danger. Her journey has transformed into a full exposure of a hidden system built on human suffering. The truth about her father and countless victims has become a driving force that cannot be ignored or abandoned. Emile Fuchson, portrayed by Lance Hendrickson, begins to fully lose psychological control. His belief system based in predator superiority relies on order and a predictable prey behavior. Chance destroys that assumption entirely. For the first time, Fuchson is facing a situation where intelligence and control are no longer enough to guarantee dominance. Pig Van Clee, portrayed by Arnold Waslow, becomes increasingly unstable. His aggression turns personal, and his desire to kill Chance overrides a strategy completely. Unlike Fuchson's calculated mindset, Van Clee operates in a rage, making him dangerous in direct conflict, but prone to reckless decisions. The action reaches its most explosive level. Industrial chases, rooftop confrontations, close-range gunfights, and brutal hand-to-hand combat sequences dominate the environment. Chance continues surviving against overwhelming odds using a precision movement, combat skill, and awareness to overcome coordinated attacks. The Hunter system is now visibly collapsing. Fear enters their ranks as Chance repeatedly survives acid traps that should have eliminated him. Their confidence erodes, replaced by hesitation and confusion. The idea of total control over prey no longer exists in a world where the prey refuses to break. The environment intensifies everything. Rain, darkness, abandoned warehouses, rusted factories, and narrow industrial corridors turn New Orleans into a chaotic battlefield. Every space feels dangerous, every movement uncertain, and every encounter potentially fatal. At the emotional center, Natasha and Chance operate as a unified force. Natasha's determination becomes unwavering as truthfully emerges, while Chance's focus sharpens toward ending the entire operation permanently. Their trust becomes the final stabilizing force in an increasingly unstable war. And as Fon's empire finally reaches total collapse, one truth becomes unavoidable. A system built on fear does not fade away slowly. It shatters the moment fear stops working, and when that happens, Thea hunters lose the only power they ever truly had. As everything reaches to final collapse inside New Orleans, Emile Fauchon's underground hunting operation disintegrates completely. The system built on secrecy, wealth, and humane cruelty can no longer sustain itself under the pressure of exposure and resistance. Chance Boudreaux has not just survived the hunt, he has ended the illusion that controlled it. Chance Boudreaux, portrayed by Jean-Claude Van Damme, now stands at the center of the final confrontation. What began as survival has transformed into full-scale justice. Every move he makes in this final stage is decisive. Also, he systematically dismantles the remaining hunters and brings the entire operation to its conclusion. Fauchon, portrayed by Lance Henriksen, is no longer in control of his empire. This philosophy of predator dominance collapses in the face of a man who refuses to submit to fear. For the first time, Fauchon is confronted with the reality that his system is not superior. It is fragile when challenged by someone who does not play by its rules. Pig Van Eyck, portrayed by Arnold Vosloo, becomes the final expression of the system's violence. His aggression, desperation, and obsession drive him into direct confrontation with Chance. But his emotional instability and reliance on brutality ultimately become weaknesses in a situation that demands control and precision. Natasha Binder, portrayed by Yancy Butler, witnesses the final collapse of the operation she risked everything to uncover. Her emotional journey reaches resolution not only through the truth about her father, but through the exposure of a system that treated human lives as disposably entertainment. Her determination becomes a part of what ensures the truth cannot be buried again. The final confrontation unfolds as Chance, music, systematically defeats the remaining threat of the hunting operation. The environment, abandoned industrial zones, collapsing structures, and chaotic urban ruins becomes the stage for the last breakdown of Fauchon's control. Each action in this stage reflects finality. No more escape, and no more manipulation, only consequence. The hunter's philosophy completely fails. Their belief that humans are divided into predators and prey collapses when faced with someone who refuses both roles. Chance does not dominate for pleasure, nor does he submit to fear. He operates on balance, discipline, and protection of others. That difference destroys the foundation of their entire system. As the violence ends, the atmosphere shifts from chaos to silence. The city of New Orleans no longer feels like a hunting ground. The illusion of control that once defined the operation is gone, replaced by the aftermath of its destruction. At the emotional core, Natasha and Chance stand as survivors of something larger than a simple conflict. Natasha's mission is fulfilled not through revenge, but through exposure of truth.